You're not meant to survive corporate life. You're meant to thrive in it with clarity, confidence, and boundaries. But I didn't always feel safe implementing my boundaries. Can you relate? Setting boundaries at work, me like whispering in my head, no, when I would type in the Teams chat, sure, no problem. So, welcome to another Thrive Space live stream. It's a terrific Thursday, actually, tremendous Thursday. I'm here again in Vancouver for a sunny summer day. And happy and excited to do this live stream, share the insights from my learnings with you here today. It is critical that we do this because, as you might have seen from my posts this week, 60% of us struggle with boundaries. And that's really important that we actually address it because it increases our risk of burnout by 40%. So something that I went through, I don't necessarily want others to go through. That's why I'm here today, and I'm here to take you through what works, what doesn't. But first, let's recognize why we actually don't feel like we can enforce our boundaries at work. So hopefully you're here today to sort of just one of these might relate to you. And hopefully with this live stream, you'll be able to sort of just help implement and address one of the things that's holding you back on creating these boundaries. So bear with me here today, and we'll just go through it. So, does saying no feel like failing, disappointing someone, or sort of just risking your reputation? You've got a reputation of being able to handle everything, right? Or losing opportunities. Feeling that if you don't take this opportunity, it might go to someone else, and future opportunities will go to that person. So I certainly felt this. I was, I felt like I had to prove myself every year. And that was because I was moving locations. So I moved from Vancouver, Canada to London and so on. I moved firms. And so each year felt like a promotion year, and moving goalposts and everything. But I did feel like I had to prove myself each year because I was told that my work in the past didn't count. And to an extent, it doesn't. It's what you bring in the moment, show that experience coming through, and having that confidence in myself, which I felt I was more having to prove myself. So that talking, how I was talking to myself was impacting how I showed up and the confidence I had to actually execute it. So I certainly felt the constant need to prove myself, and this might be you as well, feeling like someone, you'll be replaced if you say no, right? I felt certainly that way because in these large corporates, you do feel replaceable. You do feel like you're being treated like a number. So if that's you, don't worry, I get it. It's something that I've had to deal with as well. The next one here is, do you feel like that you've been conditioned? So almost like Amazon Prime. I'm used to Amazon Prime, everything instant. So in a world of constant expectations of instant replies and 24-hour service, do you get frustrated when your Amazon Prime does not show up the next day? I certainly wouldn't leave things to last minute, ideally, just in case it didn't actually show up. But normally they were reliable. And so you want to also be that reliable service as well. But the corporate culture states, we value boundaries, but also the corporate culture adds you to 7 new group chats. So it's just sort of they say one thing and do another, that's going to contribute to you not being able to uphold your boundaries. So what I felt was, if I didn't reply instantly, it was going to be escalated to my boss. So I was working with these large global companies, and if I did not give a response within the hour, they would have forwarded it to the next level up, in order to get a response right away because they were expecting this 24-hour service, even if I was in during sleeping hours. So you wake up in the morning and it's just like all panic. So if that's you, once again, like, I get it. It's a tough environment to sort of feel like you are safe to set boundaries. The next one here is, do you feel like you would look uncommitted or not a team player or be labeled as difficult if you don't sort of say yes to the assignment? I certainly did feel like this. I did not want to be labeled as difficult. Like, it's something that I saw behind the scenes, certain people being labeled as difficult because they did uphold their boundaries. And like, no, I'm not being difficult. I'm just being unavailable on purpose. That is the message. And like, it's really about framing the message in order to be able to sort of get that respected without the labels. So like, the labels of not being a team player, the labels of, being difficult, when it's really just upholding your boundaries. So how we can frame the message can deal with that element to avoid those labels. The next one I've got here, so we've got number 4, do boundaries feel like confrontation or possible conflict that you'll need to manage? So sometimes it can certainly feel like this. And like, I certainly have been intimidated by certain partners. And like, it's not always easy to sort of like, want to put in a boundary when you know that the other person needs this done, right? You feel like it's going to create conflict. You want to sort of like, avoid that tension, and you want to maintain that relationship. And you feel like, it's going to be a risk to that relationship if you put that boundary in, or if you push back, right? So I don't know, has your boss ever told you, feel free to push back? And then you push back and they say, well, not like that, right? There's almost like a disconnect with what's being said, what's being encouraged. And like, when you do actually follow through, there's resistance there, and then there can be tension, there can be conflict. And like, I've certainly in my time wanted to avoid conflict. I just want peace, like inner peace, outer peace. And so I've certainly used the avoidance tactic. And I'd rather sort of like, just overwork than risk interpersonal tension. So like, if that's you, I get it. I've been there. Like, there are some sort of like, difficult conversations, and like, for me, it's sort of, it can be pushed to the extreme, and they can know that they're being unreasonable. So for instance, when I left to go to London, the partner said, oh, as a joke, we're going to have to replace you with 5 people. So they knew that they were being unreasonable with their demands, but they kept on doing it. And so I sort of like, let my boundaries go and allowed that to happen, because I didn't necessarily want like, conflict. I didn't necessarily want to lose out on opportunities. I didn't necessarily feel like I could say no. And so pushed to the extreme to that joke. So you don't necessarily want to be the office joke. So boundaries are important, but the way in which we communicate them is what's key. So the last one here, I don't know if you can relate to this one, but certainly I can. Does slowing down feel like laziness or unsafe? So being a high achiever, sometimes we can feel like boundaries are laziness. It's like, just not keeping up with what you need to do. Like, boundary feels like you're slacking or dropping the ball, and you don't necessarily deserve a break. Like, high achievers have to like, go, and not able to actually take a break. So I don't know if you felt like this, but it certainly is something that runs in my family, a go mentality. And if there's any space in the day, it's just like, I've got to fill it. Right. So I don't know if that's something that you feel, but I've certainly grown up with that. as it does run into in my family. And slowing down feels unsafe. It feels like, oh, could I be dropping the ball? Do I need to monitor this, monitor that? Like, no, what could be going wrong? And that's anxiety talking, right? So you don't need to be busy all the time. You just need to be effective when you're at work. And in order to be effective when you're at work, during those hours, it's all about boundaries. Because, like, if we're working those really long hours, and I've worked those really long hours, it does impact my performance. It does impact my mental capacity, physical capacity, and emotional capacity. Things will irritate me a bit more, and so on. So, it's a matter of getting that rest and downtime and not necessarily feeling it all the time. So, can you relate to any of these? As I mentioned, I certainly can relate to all of them. And so for the next 20 minutes, I'll be sharing insights as to how we can create healthy boundaries. All right, so that's it. How can we shift? How can we make the actual shift here? Because 60% of us are actually struggling with boundaries these days, and 40% it directly impacts a 40% increase in your burnout risk. Just take that in for a minute, or a few seconds actually, but just take that in. So the majority of us are struggling with this. So if you're struggling with boundaries today, don't worry, you're not alone. But it's really important that we address it today, that you commit to doing one action today for yourself, for the boundaries that you need to implement. So just take one thing out of this live stream today, because that will help reduce your risk of burnout. So what can you do? Well, there's the mindset shift. So we'll talk about that. And then, of course, the mindset shift is all about knowing and being confident. It's really building that confidence. And the second one is structure, which then enables you to execute those boundaries. And then the third one is communicate. Everything is always going to come down to communication. Communication is in everything we do. So every single email, every single interaction we have with our peers, our juniors, our bosses, even outside individuals, so family, friends, and things like that. It all comes down to communication. So that is it's always something that we emphasize at Thrive Space is communication. It's how you communicate things is what's important. So the first one, as I mentioned, is mindset. So what about mindset? Mindset is knowing your value. Just because you're the junior in the room doesn't mean that you're powerless. It doesn't mean that you're lesser than the other individuals. And I know I've been the most junior person in the room, and it feels like I should just listen. I should just follow everything I do, everything that they say. I need to say yes to everything. And as a high achiever, it felt like I just needed to say yes to everything to please. But that's exactly what it is. It's pleasing, people pleasing. But just recognize that as a high achiever, leadership needs your brain more than you need their approval. So that is key. You bring strengths yourself. So it could be emotional intelligence. It could be technology. It could be understanding the market if they're targeting Gen Z market, right? Or a millennial market. It's like, I suppose, what are your strengths? So identifying your strengths, because that's your leverage, and knowing your value, knowing what you bring to the table and what other people bring to the table. There's certainly going to be people that are more experienced than you, certainly your boss, but they're going to bring strengths, and their weaknesses actually might be your strengths. So it's everyone around the table brings value. It's a matter of identifying what that is and being confident within it, because that is your leverage. When you know your value, that's when boundaries become natural and you feel like you belong at that table. So identifying your strengths is key to knowing your value that you bring to the table, because everyone has it. The next one is knowing your priorities. So knowing your priorities, what does that mean? It means having a clear vision, a clear direction, and identifying what's actually going to take you there. So your key priorities might not necessarily be everyone else's, and vice versa. Everyone else's priorities might not necessarily be yours. So what does that mean? That means everything else is background noise. Focus on your priorities. And you can do this by using the 80-20 rule. You might recall the 80-20 rule. Focus on the 20% that actually drives you towards your vision. This reduces overwhelm and makes you look high performing, right? You don't necessarily need to do everyone else's urgency. You need to be able to manage that, but it might not necessarily be your priority for the day, because it's all about your priorities. And it might be indirectly related to your priority. If your priority is moving ahead with this individual, and this individual is a key player within your career. So this, it's all about the 80-20 rule, focusing on the 20%, knowing your priorities and focusing on them. Recognizing that 80% of the activities on your to-do list is noise. The third element of mindset is knowing your identity. So when work isn't who you are, you stop feeling guilty for not instantly replying, for not saying yes to every single opportunity, for not absorbing the other person's urgency, and for not being perfect, because no one's perfect. So identity is the antidote to the guilt, because I would feel guilty if I tried to put up a boundary. I don't know if you can relate, but it certainly does help to know that you are not your work. Work is what you do. So how have I changed this? Well, it's certainly gentle reminders can help with this. Keep me grounded. This is the firm's problem, not mine. I'm here to contribute, not to be consumed. And I bring skills, not self-sacrifice. You stop absorbing the firm's problems as your own. This is something that I did too much. The firm's problems of understaffing, the firm's problems of unrealistic timelines and expectations, expecting perfection when no human is perfect. Knowing this, you don't have to feel guilty. The next is, so let's go through that just here quickly. So the first is mindset is everything. So knowing your value, identifying your strengths, and realizing what you bring to the table is just as powerful as what others are bringing to the table as well. Knowing your key priorities. So it's actually going to take you towards your vision, because it might not necessarily be everyone else's urgency. And you've got to focus on you, because that's exactly what they're doing. They're focusing on themselves. So you need to focus on you, because they're not going to focus on you. And the third is knowing your identity, so you don't feel that guilt. All right, you might have seen a just little clip there, but the next one is structure. And the key thing for structure, what is that? That's time blocking. This is a powerful tool. Your calendar, your diary, that is going to help you, I suppose, drive you towards actually focusing on your priorities, getting those boundaries in, those block times, and also treating your well-being activities like important meetings, saying, I'm not available at this time, but I can do this other time, right? So, what are some examples for this? We can do, all right, I've got a deep focus time. Typically for me, I change location away from, so I'm going to have fewer distractions, and my focus time is about, 10 a.m. to 11:30 lunchtime. That is one of my focus blocks for me to get away from certain distractions and focus on what I need to do. I do try and do it around about that time, but then I can also, if I need an additional block, I do that earlier in the morning. Once again, avoiding distractions, because I can easily get distracted, with certain things and interruptions. And I'm sure you're the same, where you get pings. There are certain times of day when you just can't get some deep focus time. So I find that the morning is when I can actually truly focus. Another one is I have a power 30 block where I try and do those tasks that just need to get done. I can't necessarily delegate, but they are not the most important tasks. So that's things like that are urgent but not important, right? So they're the little admin tasks, the compliance tasks. I wasn't always great at that in the past, and it's one of those blocks where there is a bit of shuffling in my day. But having that block of time does really help me with email replies and things like that. So you're not constantly being interrupted by trying to respond back immediately with emails and so on when it doesn't need that urgency. The next one is daily updates. So if I was at my boss or if I was at the office, I do daily updates at a certain time. I didn't necessarily practice this, but it's something that I would do if I was back in the office. Just having a regular set time so they know when they can actually expect an update for me. It then allows me not to be chased, not to have those notifications, not to have those distractions, things like that. So time blocking is your power tool within your diary, and having those set routines so that it sort of sets the expectations of others. And so you're not sort of flexing around their timetable and expectations. You're basically setting the expectations and others are adapting to you. So that is the power of this. You almost switch the power dynamic by doing it this way. And this creates predictable rhythms. So it's really important that you do this. And then the last one, so just going through here, just going up on screen. So structuring your day, it is the predictable rhythms. So setting those focus blocks, setting those well-being times in and as meetings, having regular updates at a certain time so when people can expect them, having set times for replying back to emails so people know when to expect them, know when they are typically online. That helps with setting expectations for people. And that is what's key for structuring your day. It just makes your life a whole lot easier. There's less chasing of you, and you're able to actually use those focus blocks to do the work that you need to do. So the third one is communicate. And that is probably one of the most important ones of all, is the communication. So for what we suggest at Thrive Space is something that I've noticed throughout the years, is the AAA approach. So what is the AAA approach? It is acknowledge, right? So that sounds like a fantastic and important project. What you're doing here is you're recognizing the importance of the task, because I don't know if you've ever had something that you've gone to someone with, and they almost dismiss it as an unimportant task, or not worth their time, things like that. It does not land well. So recognizing the importance and the benefit of that project is key. And then also appreciating. So the second one is appreciate. Thanks for thinking of me for this opportunity. So that's going to help you sort of recognize the other person coming to you, their efforts, and them thinking of you. And it's also going to help prevent them going to others always with future opportunities. So I mentioned at the beginning that risk of not having future opportunities. If you say no, this will help prevent that. So, and then the third one is alternatives. So I'm not able to do that timing, but I can do this instead, right? So provide option A and option B, and they can then choose, right? So if you do alternatives with regards to timing or scope, that's typically where the flexibility is. So breaking down, I can deliver parts A and B this week and then C and D next week, because that's the only capacity I have at the moment. So providing them with an alternative, providing them with a solution, but saying no initially is not just a plain no. You're providing an alternative. And so you're still seen as being a team player. You're still seen as a solution, having a solution mindset. So that is what's key. So the triple A approach, that is acknowledge, appreciate, and alternatives. Do you see the power in this? So why is this important? Well, you can also combine it with certain phrases in order to keep the rapport with your boss, because relationships are crucial for the corporate world. They're crucial in all of your life, but certainly for the corporate world, because they determine who actually gets ahead. And I hate to break it to you, it's not all about the technical, it's not all about the delivery, it's also those relationships. So being able to set the boundaries while maintaining the relationships, that's a skill set that is so key to thriving in the corporate space. So certainly acknowledge, appreciate, and provide alternatives. And we combine this with certain phrases. So what are those certain phrases? Well, let me share them with you. So we've got the process boundaries. So the process boundaries are things like, I work best when I have clear deadlines, can confirm the priority. I'll send a daily update at 4 p.m. So we stay aligned. And I block focus time between these 2 hours to move key deliverables forward. So you're basically setting the expectation of the other individual, and you're at the same time sort of allowing yourself space to actually deliver. As long as you follow through on that time, that is good. So then they'll set that expectation and they'll stop chasing you for updates. They'll stop adding things or trying to put meetings within that focus time. This is how you can sort of set those expectations with a process. The next one is visibility. So visibility is something that is my favorite boundary. Let me check my capacity. But of course, spoiler, I never have capacity. And that is a summary of my career. I never had capacity. I basically always, anything landing on my plate was overtime. So this is a mistake you may wish to avoid. And you can do this through, here's what's on my plate today. Where should this fit? Right? So it's basically, it allows, particularly if you're working with the same partner or the same boss, it then allows you to sort of say, they might actually switch the priorities. They might say, take something off your plate, no, this is no longer a priority. So it puts it on their shoulders. Another one there is, I'm currently at capacity with X, Y, and Z, or Z if you're American. Happy to take this if something moves or if we deprioritize something else, right? So it's basically, you're not giving them an option of taking something off. It's basically, I can only take this on if something else gets off my plate, right? So the next one is, I can take this on, but it'll shift X. Is that okay with you? Right? It will shift X. It is not an option. That's what's going to happen, right? So the key thing with the visibility is that it's not really an option. You're presenting what's on your plate, and they have a choice in it. They've got still the power, but it is, it's a solution. It's alternatives, right? And I know that we're coming up to time, but the last one here is communicating time boundaries. So I've mentioned this before, if you've attended some of our previous live streams, but time boundaries are key and they can really help. So what are time boundaries? They are, I'll review this after my current meeting and get back to you by 3 p.m. Or to deliver this at the quality you expect, I'll need until tomorrow morning. Or here's what I can complete today. For the rest, what would you like me to do? Prioritize. So it's basically like, I can only do so much. Like, no, you're going to have to make a decision here. So like I said, this keeps the rapport. This keeps, but it also sets the boundaries. So you're able to have that focused time, but also have a life outside, because that's important for your identity. It's not all about work. And I do need to remind myself about that each and every day, even with Thrive Space. It can be all about work sometimes. Gotta have a little fun there. So hopefully I'm over delivering for you here. Certainly trying to do that, committed to doing that. And the key thing, as just a reminder, is creating the shift. And how we do that is through the mindset. So that is knowing your value, knowing your priorities, and knowing your identity. We've also got structure. So time blocking is important, is so key. This is how you can set those expectations, right? And third is communicate, the AAA approach, the acknowledge, the appreciate the alternatives, to keep that relationship, because that's so critical in the corporate world. So if you want to elevate your game even further, we've got the Clarity Under Pressure series. And why am I excited about that? Because that takes you not just from surviving, but truly actually thriving. So if you like this, these snippets of strategies on boundaries, that's just one of the modules. But there's 5 modules within Clarity Under Pressure. There's absolutely 5 modules, so you get 5 times the benefit, if not more. So if you found this session today helpful, this is just a little snippet of the first module. And there's so much more to it. Clarity Under Pressure, to move from surviving the workday to truly thriving, because it will improve your communication, your boundaries, and confidence in expressing your needs. It'll take you from drowning to you've got this. So Clarity Under Pressure, that is these 5 modules, is communication and influence. So like I said, communication is so key. And of course, influence, especially when you don't have authority in the room. You're the most junior person. That doesn't necessarily mean you don't have influence. So when you know your value, you can have influence. And it's combined with emotional intelligence. So can you read the room? Can you read the emotions in the room? And can you use those emotions to drive it forward towards your vision? So the third one there is identity and resilience. So if you need that rapid recovery or that grounded presence, this module is absolutely for you. And then the fourth one there is focus with intention. So there's a world of chaos out there. Actually, I sometimes actually have to move locations in order to get away from certain distractions. But you don't necessarily need to move into another room. Focus with intention has some techniques to it. Focusing that energy where you need to put it, right? To actually make a difference, to move the needle forward. So that module's for you if you just keep on getting distracted and with the pings, the emails, the Slack, and you just can't get anything done. You feel overwhelmed with it all. That module is for you. Another module that is going to help you move forward is the decisions with uncertainty. So if you feel like you need the perfect path, the perfect decision, this one's for you, because it helps you break things down and just take one step forward at a time. This is your guide, your cheat code to the test, and it's the corporate test, right? How do you make decisions when you don't know what the answer is? I ask that question sometimes, and it can be annoying when you don't have the answer. If you knew the answer, then you just do it, right? But that's not always going to be the case. And I wish it wasn't the case, but we have to live with how life presents. So invest in yourself. It's the biggest and best investment that comes from, it's not necessarily a direct quote, but it comes from Warren Buffett, one of the most successful business people in the world. You've got a 40% discount with the word clarity, capital letters, on the Clarity Under Pressure course. That ends this week, so on the 15th of August. So absolutely grab it now. You've got 40% off with the Clarity discount available. It's an exclusive discount to our live stream individuals. So thank you for attending for this. It's a wonderful time. It's a wonderful Thursday. It's a beautiful summer day here in Vancouver. I hope you've managed to get one thing out of this at least. So if you just take a step back, I've been talking a lot. I've been going at some speed, but let's just take a step back. Let's just take a step back and ask yourself, out of all of those things that we discussed, and I know it's a quick 35 minutes, but what is one action that you can do today to help reduce your burnout risk and help you stop struggling with boundaries? So is it the mindset shift, which is sort of just knowing your value, just taking 5 minutes and jotting down your strengths. There's strength exercises out there. If you want to go online and try and find what your strengths and values are, there's those out there. Then there's the knowing your priorities. So really identifying, you've got a huge to-do list. I can picture it now. Just understand what's the 20%. Identify the 20% and focus in on that. And then there's then there's knowing your identity. So just having those quick sayings that we've got. I mentioned a couple of there. This is the firm's problem, not mine. I'm here to contribute, not be consumed. So those are the types of sayings that you can say to yourself. Are there certain reminders that are going to help you today? Structure. So structure, if you can put focus blocks in your diary, if you can put reminders for certain updates at certain times, if you schedule your well-being activities as important meetings in your diary, you can even call them important meetings. So if someone has access to your diary, they can see that it's an important meeting when it's actually going to yoga. But it is important because it helps reset your mind, turns your mind off, such that you can actually deliver focus during the important hours. And of course, lastly, communication. So the AAA approach. These are things that can help you. So what is one thing from today's live stream that can truly help you today? So what is one thing that you're going to implement today, action today? And of course, hopefully one of them is taking advantage of that Clarity Under Pressure discount of 40%. A generous offer for those that do attend these live streams, and it ends this week. So absolutely try and get that in before the deadline, which is the 15th of August. So just a couple of days, and you can sign up for our school community if you want more insights. Like I said, the course gives you basically the roadmap for actually truly thriving in the corporate space. It uses science-backed strategies, and also it uses lived experience. So the two combined is what gives you the roadmap to actually truly thriving in the space. And then stay tuned to our next live stream, which is coming up on Tuesday. So we've got live streams on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Loved having you here. So thank you, everyone. Check out our website for those links as well. But I hope you have a great day. It's a terrific Thursday, a transformational Thursday, especially if you take that action today. So have a great one and enjoy a beautiful summer day.